Hello there and welcome. It's Psychic Cynthia here, Spiritual Psychic Cynthia Killian, and welcome, dear one. This is your cosmic forecast, your Friday forecast for the week ahead. And this forecast is for the week ahead of Monday, November 23rd through Sunday, November 29th. And just let me say right off the top, most of this week, especially near the beginning and the middle, is relatively calm, cosmically and astrologically speaking. But don't let that fool you, because as we get closer to the end of the week, and even into the very beginning of next week, there are storms brewing. So this is a time to really hang on to your sense of inner groundedness and your connection with your intuition, and use your inner eye to see in the darkness. Would you like to talk about it a bit more in some detail? Well, let's get started, shall we? And as we're beginning, let's just take a few deep breaths in to be more grounded and centered. Because with these energies that are about to hit us soon, we're going to need those deep, deep roots. This is a time of feeling deeply, but in order to do that and to do that well, we must also be grounded deeply. So in this week ahead, and again, that's the week of November 23rd through November 29th, we are now in the time of the Sun in Sagittarius. And by the way, happy birthday to all you early Sagittariuses. And in fact, this video will come out on the day before the Sun enters Sagittarius. The Sun is entering Sagittarius on Saturday, November 21st this year. And we'll be in Sagittarius for the next month ahead. And that's a great blessing. That helps to tamper and balance some of the more intense energies. And if you'd like to know more about this wonderful time of Sun in Sagittarius, please check out last week's forecast video where I talked about the Sun in Sagittarius in great detail. But again, happy birthday to you all of you Sagittariuses, the sign ruled by the beloved Jupiter planet. And to those of you who are watching from the United States, who live in the US like I do, I hope you all have a wonderful and blessed Thanksgiving, and that you find in your heart much to be grateful and thankful for. And this will help you through these intense energies that we are about to jump off into. So, in this week ahead of November 23rd through November 29th, in this last full week of November, we have a very nice calm waters for the first part of the week. But the thing is, the factor is that next week at the very beginning, almost at the end of this week, we're going to have a full moon lunar eclipse. And so this is the beginning of the eclipse season again. And this happens about every 6 months, okay? Every 6 months, we get an opportunity to reset. But as part of that, whether you're talking about a lunar eclipse, which is a full moon eclipse, where the moon will be overshadowed, or a solar eclipse, which is a new moon eclipse, and that's where the sun will be overshadowed. So with either of these, and by the way, we will have the solar eclipse a couple weeks later, after this full moon lunar eclipse that's coming up really at the beginning of next week. It's kind of a crossover between both because it's, late Sunday night, early Monday morning. So with both of these, the whole eclipse season, you might say, there is a shadow aspect involved. I mean, this is very visceral. You can see it with your eyes. Well, if you're in a place where it's visible, and we might talk more about that in another video, but they do say that if you are in a place where you can actually see that eclipse, or at least could in theory, but especially if you do, then it has more of an effect on the inhabitants in that area. Frankly, I haven't traveled the whole entire world to test that out, but It makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. So whether you can see it or not with your physical eyes, there is a shadow that will be cast across the moon for this full moon lunar eclipse that's coming up. Really, kind of, this is more for the next forecast, but it overlaps, okay? And the thing about eclipses, you don't just feel them on the day. You don't even just feel them the day before or the day after. I mean, many people feel full moons anyway, just an ordinary full moon. Many people will feel that for up to a week ahead of time and a week after. But all the more so when you're talking about a lunar eclipse. So even though most of the transits happening this week, November 23rd through November 29th, that's 2020, most of the transits are pretty sedate, I would say, and calm. But the fact that this week is, we're almost to the eclipse, we're going to be building up. We are in the shadow of the eclipse. We are in the shadow of the shadow. We are in the build-up period. And one way to think about it, for those of you watching who have any familiarity with, astrology, if you've been watching any of my videos or, other people's videos or reading, I think one thing that will help you to understand eclipses in general is that they have an effect that is different but very similar to Mercury retrograde. Because there is this sort of disintegration and disintegration of logic and amplification of emotional energies, especially with the lunar eclipse. It will be interesting to see. I can't wait to do the forecast for the solar eclipse because that a lot of times, I'll just say this, with the solar eclipse coming up, a little bit later in December, the solar eclipses tend to trigger world events more, like in politics or on a national or international level. So it will be interesting to look at that and see. But right now we're going to stick with this one. And this week we are in advance. We are in the shadow. We are building up to the eclipse. So what I observe happens in the weeks actually, but especially the week before and to some extent the week after, there is a disintegration that goes on, breakdown. This is a good time for cleansing and letting go, just like with Mercury retrograde. That's why I say it's similar. Understand it's a completely different phenomenon. It's not even planetary. It relates to the sun and the moon, okay? But this is a time to be cleansing and to be letting go, because by the time the eclipse actually hits late Sunday night, technically Monday morning, by then the energies are going to be so intense and peaking that you're going to want to have already cleansed some and released and let go. And listen, you can do this cleansing on a lot of levels, okay? But one of the easiest ways is to work on the physical level. We can work from the physical back to the spiritual, or we can work from the spiritual back to the physical, because it's all a hologram. You understand what I mean by hologram? Hologram is a picture, basically with pictures within pictures. Every piece of that hologram reflects the whole. So your life is that way. So think about cleansing in this week ahead. And it's kind of an ironic time to be thinking of that in the United States we are having the Thanksgiving holiday, and a lot of that's about feasting, right? And yes, celebrating our blessings. And we can still do that, okay? But at the same time, are there some things in your life that you need to let go of and cleanse? And I would maybe think of starting on the physical level. I think if you start on the physical level, that is very, very easy to get the ball rolling to help you deal with some of the larger levels or the more difficult levels. Like, for example, emotional cleansing is more difficult, I think, for most people than physical cleansing. Because it's hard sometimes. It is always hard to let go of relationships that we are attached to, because we're attached to them, right? And this doesn't mean you have to let go of everything you're attached to. It just means definitely with this eclipse coming up here soon, there are some habits, there are some things, there are some old ways of being that you're needing to let go of. And I would actually encourage you to look at your life and ask yourself, because this has been sort of a strange year with, the COVID freak out and all that. And some people are doing quite well spiritually. They're very centered and they're going on with their lives and they're taking care of themselves and their family, and they're doing what they need to do. And not only that, but they're finding a way to thrive. But some of us, actually, it's a little bit of both, I think, for most of us. I'm doing all of that. And then also I've noticed that some habits have crept in, in response to different things, lockdowns and all that are not so positive and healthy. One habit on a collective level, I see it's just so in fashion right now to propagate fear, to be depressed, to tell people to stay safe. Don't ever tell me to stay safe, okay? I hate that saying. Now listen, I know some of you love it and you want to just stay in your bubbles and stay safe. Good for you, okay? Really, if you need that, if you're not feeling safe, if you feel vulnerable, I get it. And, you do need to take care of yourself. And I understand that part of the sentiment. But some of us have been playing small because we're trying to stay safe. And you don't grow by playing small, okay? So, or getting apathetic. It's very in vogue right now to be apathetic about things like our weight or our appearance because, maybe we're under a quarantine or a lockdown. We don't have to go out anymore. That's not an excuse to let your health go to hell. That's not an excuse to let your even appearance go to hell. And you may think, well, Cynthia, do things like our weight or our appearance or how our house looks, does this matter to people on the spiritual path? I suppose it depends on your own spiritual path. But to me, it's all a hologram. It's a hologram. So, we want all parts of it to be at least healthy and well. So look at where you're needing to let go of if there's any new bad habits you have as a result of the quarantine. If you know your life, okay? And maybe you don't. Maybe you have only all good habits. And look at all levels, okay? Look at the physical, look at the spiritual. Look at what's in your heart. Is your heart full of hate? Do you have hatred or animosity towards anybody? A politician? Towards a group of people who think differently than you? Towards a neighbor? Towards a former friend? Towards a coworker? Are you letting hate invade your heart? These are things to be cleansed in this week ahead. And beyond, actually, because this eclipse is ushering in a new 6-month cycle. So you will have to deal with these things. This is a course correction. Whether you want to or not, you will be forced to course correct. That's what happens with the eclipse cycles. They give us the nudge to reset, to restart. And we'll talk more about it next week, like what are the specific areas. It could be many different areas, but I'm hitting on some of it now. So that is what we're in the shadow of. It's already being activated, even though it's not happening this week. We are already feeling the energies. And, any full moon is wonderful and lively and brings up a lot of energy. It makes us, shakes things up, right? And helps us to complete, to finish things. But with this full moon being associated with the eclipse that's coming up, these are karmic completions. So they do take a long time. They do take longer than normal, okay? So just, I'm not saying nothing can be done by, this week. Of course, some things can be completed, but there will be some more major completions that will take a long time for you to resolve. Could take up to 6 months for you to resolve in your heart. On the other hand, you may see some situations that had been bothering you greatly resolve in this week ahead or the next week. So sometimes there can be things that just resolve on their own. So it isn't all just about working hard to change ourselves or, looking at where we need to cleanse. And by the way, I've been doing some physical cleansing lately. Like I've been eating more smoothies. I don't do that all the time, okay? And I personally don't think that's healthy. That's just my own personal take on it. I don't want to eat every meal out of a blender all the time. But sometimes to go through a period of cleansing where I eat more of them is very helpful. And that helps me sometimes when these kinds of energies are coming up. Now, I also eat grounding foods too later. I eat the smoothies in the morning and then the grounding foods later. You could reverse it. So just a little tip, give your body a little break if you can. The less energy spent in digestion, the more energy you have to deal with the emotions and the energies coming up. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. The other big thing happening this week is Neptune is going direct. So Neptune, when it goes direct, Neptune is this wonderful planet connected with the sublime and the beauty. It's connected with the highest expressions of beauty and spirituality and mysticism, higher unconditional love. And it's also connected with our illusions, our self-delusions, our denial, our addictions, even self-pity, martyrdom, victimhood. It is associated with passive higher service of love, and it is associated with prisons, but also monasteries. And hopefully, as I'm talking about these associations, you can kind of feel the whole energy of Neptune and what it encompasses. And so when it goes direct, really when it moves in any way, but when it goes direct, there can be an increase in self-delusion. There can be fantasies taking over, okay? We can think someone is something that they're not, even though it's obvious to others that this person is not that great, but we can get carried away in the grand romance of it, so to speak. It's seeing life through those rose-colored idealistic glasses, which I'm not totally opposed to. You want to partner that with also seeing people and situations how they are, all of how they are, seeing the beautiful part, the potential, and then also seeing the reality of what that situation is now and working within that too. It's sort of like balancing Neptune and Saturn. And I know we don't think about that a lot. We don't think about balancing our idealism with our practicality, but it can be done. It can be done if we set that intention. So going in this week ahead, and that's happening, Neptune is going direct on Friday. So that'd be, what's the date on that? Friday, that would be Saturday, I think. Saturday, November 28th. It's a very ungrounded energy. And when you add that to the full moon lunar eclipse coming up, in general, this next upcoming weekend is a little bit ungrounded, which it can be a fun place to visit for some time, but maybe if something seems too good to be true, well, check within to your intuition. And by intuition, I don't mean ego. I don't mean wishful thinking. I don't mean your fantasy mindset. I don't mean what you want to believe is true. I mean what that deep inner wise being within you is truly saying. And you can feel it if you're really tuned in. You can feel when that intuition is speaking, or you can hear it, or however you experience it. But there is a different quality to it. When truth comes, it rings true, right? There's a sensation, a resonance. So that's what we're looking for that will help to keep you grounded. And the upside of Neptune going direct, well, there's many upsides. I've already sort of, touched on some of them. The upside is that it stimulates our idealism, our unconditional love, and also our psychicism, our mysticism. If you're grounded, you can experience the next month or two ahead as a very much more psychic time, an increase in communication with your guides, an increase in inspiration. So it can be very inspiring, very creative. This would be a good time to focus in on communicating with your guides, or focus in on communicating with your angels, or just, your inner muse, right? If you're creative, then tap into that inner muse. This is a great time for musicians, for writers, for artists of all kinds, for people who work in technological forms of art, for people who take photographs, for people who sing, who dance. This can be a highly creative time. In general, if you take that energy of Neptune, which is so sublime and beautiful, and channel it into some form of higher self-expression or a spirituality, then great things can be created. But if you don't have that, then you might turn yourself into a martyr or a victim. And I will say, if there are people in your life who are prone to victimhood or fantasy thinking, it's probably going to become a little bit worse around this time after Neptune goes direct, and especially with that full moon lunar eclipse in Gemini coming up, because Gemini rules the thought processes in the logical mind. Yes, there may not be much logic for those individuals. And what I would say to that is, maybe I should have opened with this, is a very important message. Don't let yourself become a victim to somebody else's web of victimhood. Let me repeat that so you really get it. Don't let yourself become a victim or become drained, sapped, or depleted, entangled by somebody else's web of self-created victimhood. There are people who revel in being victims. They revel. They roll in it. They want people to feel sorry for them. They want to be helpless. That's their karma, okay? I don't think they're bad people necessarily. I feel like they're playing a role in the larger picture, just because there are also other people who enjoy rescuing others. And so in order to rescue somebody, you have to have people who feel like they're victims and helpless, right? So the flip side of this is, don't be a rescuer, okay? I mean, yes, help somebody out if you can, but don't go seeking out for helpless people. I mean, be kind. Just be kind, be caring. Maybe just don't be a butthole. Actually, most people can fix their own situations if just given a little bit of resources. So, rather than giving people sympathy, or giving them anything really, empower them. If you're going to give them anything, it should be something to empower them. And remember, you can't give anything if you are drained. So don't let yourself be drained. And man, you might have to learn how to say no this week if you don't know how to. And especially in the United States, with this being a time when many families are going to get together, or communicate more, even if you're not getting together. Maybe you're going to call some family members you don't call often. There might be some asking for some things that, you just don't feel right about. And if you don't feel right about it, don't do it. Now, if you do feel right about it, do it. Really in the giving, it should be of something that gives back to you by feeling good about it. Okay, enough about that. I guess, that's just really inspiration from the guides. I didn't plan to talk about that aspect of Neptune, but I know somebody out there, one of you watching this needs that. You need to know how to deal with this. You need to know not to get drawn into somebody else's web of victimhood. Not to let yourself become ensnared in that. So that must be very important for you. Okay, well, on that note, I am wishing you all a splendid week ahead. And I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for all of you who watch this channel, who support it with your comments and your presence here, and especially those of you who subscribe and watch regularly. I thank you so much for your support for this work of cosmic light on the planet. Until next time, I'm sending you many good vibes and asking that your blessings be increased 1,000-fold. Bright blessings.